It is time to update some of the Social Security records. Now, when it comes to genealogy research, Social Security records are absolutely a goldmine of information. There are 4 types of records that you may be able to find. A lot of people stop with just the Social Security Death Index, and there is a lot more to find. We're going to jump into all of that coming up next. I want to remind you that there is a handout for this episode. And hey, if this is your first time here, my name is Connie Knox. I am a professional genealogist here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family history research. All right, let's jump in. Okay, just a quick understanding of some of the background. The Social Security Administration was created in 1935, but the first records were actually the first Social Security cards were issued in mid-November of 1936. So you need to keep this in mind. However, that doesn't mean that your ancestors were born after that point, because I have ancestors that were born in the early 1900s, but applied for a Social Security card in the 1930s. So keep that in mind as you're researching. Also, just a side tip, sometimes people had to get a delayed birth certificate because there wasn't birth certificates. Like if you were born in 1880, there wasn't a birth certificate back then. Birth certificates didn't come around until like the mid 19 teens, roughly 1909 through about 1920-ish, sometimes even later. So they may have had to apply for a delayed birth certificate to get a Social Security card because they had to prove their age. So that being said, there's some historical background. The Social Security Record Administration was created in 1935. Records started happening in 1936. That gives you a little bit of timeline. Now, the Social Security Death Index was created in 1962, but it has information back to the beginning of the Social Security Administration. All right, there's your history. Now, there are 4 types of records that you can get that are related to the Social Security records for your ancestor, and they are all publicly available. There is the Social Security Death Index, which is usually what people find first, and that usually is often delivered in hints and stuff on your Ancestry platform, Family Search and such. There's also the Social Security Applications and Claims Index. This is something that a lot of people overlook, and so that can provide additional information. There is the Social Security Numinant Files. Of course, numinant is a word that only the Social Security Administration created, but it basically means the numerical identification records. And then there's the SS5, which is the original application that your ancestor filled out when they applied for a Social Security card. So that might be one that you really want to seek. Well, the SS5 is not available online necessarily. So let's jump into each one of these record sets and see what it is that you can find. And by the way, there is a handout for this. All of that information is in the handout. Check the notes below as to what kind of membership you have, if you have a membership here, to get the handout. So all that information is down below. And by the way, speaking of the handout, I gave you this handy dandy little grid in the handout that shows you what records have which information, because if you'll see, the Social Security Death Index has some information, but the Social Security Applications and Claims Index might have, while overlapping some information, might have some different information, as does the Numinant records, and the SS5 has additional information. And really, some of the key information that we're looking for are the parents' names, and it is listed here in some of those records here. The SS5 does not necessarily name the parents' names, and this is where everybody stops. So I'm trying to get you to go and seek more information. Where there's an index, there's an original record. The SS5 is the original record, okay? So let's move on. There are 4 ways to get the handouts. Now, the first way is to join the channel membership here at the information access level on the YouTube channel, and then go over to the membership tab, and then you can scroll through the posts and find the post that has the links in there, and then all you have to do is download the handouts. Okay, now the second way is over at Patreon. At Patreon, if you're at the Happy Dance level or higher, you can get the handouts. Those come directly to you in an email, every time we announce the new video that has a handout with it. Now, the third way is if you are a Genealogy TV Academy member, you have an all-access pass to everything, all the courses and all the handouts and all the videos. And then lastly, if membership does not float your boat, you can go over to the genealogytv.org website and click on the handouts tab, and there you can purchase the handouts for individual purchase. I hope that was helpful. The handouts really do support the channel, and for that, I thank you. So we're going to use my great-grandmother, Frances Madsen. You notice the name is different here. Frances Madsen is the name that is under the Social Security records because that is her married name. So we need to keep this in mind when we're thinking about those dates, which is one of the reasons why I gave you that historical information in the beginning, because what name were they under in 1936, 37, whenever they applied for that Social Security card? What name did they have? Were they still unmarried or were they married? So here we're going to use Frances here as an example because I have all 4 sets of records for her. And so you'll be able to compare and see the types of records that I have for each one of those. So first of all, let's jump over and take a look at what Ancestry has for Social Security records. So here I went to search, dropped down to card catalog, and in the title, I did a keyword search, and I also got some outside of the United States Social Security records from France. So I backed up and I used just the word Social Security in the title. And these are the 2 record sets that Ancestry has. They have the Social Security Applications and Claims Index, which is super important, and the Social Security Death Index. Now, a lot of times you'll pick up the Social Security Death Index first, and then you will get a hint delivered because the Social Security number is often in the Social Security Death Index record. And so with that Social Security number, Ancestry's algorithm is saying, aha, I found another Social Security number in the Applications and Claims Index that matches, so here you go. And they'll deliver you a hint. So a lot of times you'll pick up the Applications and Claims Index. But I want to point out right here, the record numbers, 133 million for the Applications and Claims Index versus 94 million in just the Death Index. Why is that? I don't know. But just point being is make sure that you're looking in both places. Will your ancestor appear in both record sets? Not necessarily. So I have found some that show up in the Death Index, but they don't show up in the Applications and Claims Index. And it could be because nobody claimed a record, survivorship, or death benefits from the Social Security Administration after someone passed away, or vice versa. They may be appearing in the Applications and Claims Index, and you're not seeing them in the Death Index. Just saying, there is a difference sometimes, okay? Now, when we jump over to Family Search, as you can see, there are 2 different types of indexes on Family Search. One is the Numident, which is not on Ancestry and is on Family Search. So this is the 3rd type of record. While they both have the Social Security Death Index, Family Search has the Numident files, which is another set of information, and I'm going to show you the differences on all 3 of those. Now, the SS5, you actually have to go to the Social Security Administration and request that. Do the other research first because you're going to need that in order to make that application for the SS5 if you choose to do so. And the SS5 sometimes can have a little bit more information, a signature of your ancestor where they filled out the card. But other than that, you'll see. You may or may not find additional information. It may not be worth it to go search for that SS5. It is a little bit of a pain in the butt to kind of search to do the online application. I think it's probably easier just to download the form and mail it in. So we'll talk about all of that. Hey, we're going to get back to that video here in just a moment, but I want to let you know that Genealogy TV has a website, a newsletter, and a Facebook page. Links for all of that are in the show notes below. All right, let's get back to it. So let's start with how to find these records, first of all. If you are on Ancestry, go to search and go down to the card catalog. And then from there in the keyword search, you can go SSDI and it will pop up with both sets of records. Even though this is the Social Security Death Index, which is the SSDI, they've keyworded SSDI in the Claims, Applications and Claims Index as well. So easy peasy, right? Now let's jump over and show you how to find these records on Family Search. So here we are on Family Search. And once you are logged in, you go to Search and then to Records. And this takes us right back to where we were a little bit ago. I find it easiest to search the collections. And so if we search the United States Social Security, the words United States Social Security, we get the death index and the Numident file. So then we can click on this and it takes us there and we can search for our ancestor and see if she pops up. She was born in 1880. So even though she was born in 1880, she survived long enough to get a Social Security record. And here you can see it. We'll jump into more of that here in a moment. For those who are on MyHeritage, you would go to Research, then you would drop down to Collection Catalog, and then you can search from here using the words Social Security and hit go, and you can get the Applications and Claims Index, the Death Index here. Also, you'll notice it's popping up with California death indexes. If you only type Social Security, you're going to get the same California death index as well on Ancestry. Back over to Frances Madsen now. So while she was born in Denmark, she did get a Social Security card, actually became naturalized in the United States. And so, long story short, we have way down this list here, we have the Social Security Death Index and the Applications and Claims Index. Let's first jump over to the Social Security Death Index, which is often the record people will find. Now, this is an index. This is a database, right? So it's giving us the information, including her Social Security number, which you want to make note of so that you can make sure that you are finding the same records. Just a tip on this one, Frances Madsen had a daughter named Frances Madsen. So, when I'm looking at the records, I have to be careful to make sure that I'm looking at my great-grandmother and not my great-aunt, I guess. Anyway, Frances Madsen had a daughter named Frances Madsen, and so they're two different people. So we just got to be careful as to which record we are looking at. The Social Security number certainly can help you with that because they are unique to every person. Additionally, the birth date is in here, the date of issue, which is 1966, long after the 1935 creation of the administration. So she didn't apply until 1966. There you have it. Okay, so if we hit View Record, there's really not much more information in this case. It does give us her last residence. And one of the tips that a viewer actually sent in a while back was that last residence doesn't necessarily mean it's her last residence. It could be the residence of the person who was making an application or reporting the death. It could have been a nursing home. So just be mindful that that last residence doesn't necessarily mean the last place that this person lived. Of course, we want to capture that information and we want to put it into our research notes, including the source information, which you can find in the source tab here. And it even gives you the original source as well as the Ancestry source if you want to cheat and just copy and paste that in. If you're a professional researcher, you can't do that. Moving on to the Social Security Applications and Claims Index. As you can see here, we're going to view the record and our little screenshot here. In this case, for this ancestor, the parents aren't named in this record. I'm not sure why. Don't know. But normally there's a name here and a hyperlink. So you can hyperlink over to their records if it's there. Okay, so here we have a little bit of different information. We have Frances, and the JOH is an abbreviation for Johnson because that was her middle name once she married. Her actual original birth name was Francisca Amelia Cornelia Jensen. And so there we have that. So anyway, again, Social Security number helps us confirm the record, and there's really nothing more we can do with this other than to make the notations and the additional information that we may find here. This is where I fixed it in the index. This little Frances Madsen is where I was able to go in and edit that so that it was shown. Again, add to your research notes and your source information. Here I have jumped over to Family Search so that we can pick up the Nubident file, right? We had found Frances Madsen over here, and as you can see, there is a lot more information in this Nubident file, the numerical identification files. And here we have some of the same information that we saw before, and now we are getting some additional information. We've got previous residents. We have her father's name. Remember, the Social Security Applications and Claims Index did not have the parents' names, and her mother's name as well. So there is some sort of correspondence. Now, we could write for this correspondence through the Social Security Administration. It just depends. More than likely, it's just an application after her death for death benefits. So that is good information. You can scroll down and you can actually, looks like a hyperlink, but I'm going to guess it doesn't go anywhere except for the same record in reverse. So this is Lawrence Johnson, her father, but it's the same record about Frances Madsen. Okay, so now we're going to jump into my files because I had written for the SS5, which you have to get from the Social Security Administration. Now, I file everything under a person's maiden name, a woman's maiden name. It was Johnson or Jensen as she changed her name. So this is under the Johnson Jensen name, even though the record was a Madsen record. And then once I get into her file, I can go to Frances Johnson, and this is her. Isn't she cute? It's in my research notes, and so I'm looking around. Here it is, the SS5. So let's take a look at that. Okay, this is the SS5 that I wrote for. Now, you do have to pay a fee to get this. I think it's like $27. That information's in the handout. I forget exactly what it is. It's also on the website. When you apply for it, this is what it looks like. And as you can see, it's got her parents, Lawrence Johnson and Christine Beck, listed here. These are kind of Americanized names, but neither one of these people, I believe, came to the United States. Lawrence might have. Long story short, it's got all the information. We can confirm it with the Social Security number. And that's it for this record. Now, this is a computer printout. This is not the original record. And apparently it was not available for this ancestor. But apparently some of the SS5s in their original form with the ancestor signature is still available. So this particular one, as you can tell, is a computer printout by the dot matrix printer feed form. This was written for a long time ago. And so let's jump over for a second. Jumping back over to the Social Security Administration website, this is where you would apply for the SS5. It has to be a deceased person. You have to be related to this person. You can't just apply for anybody. When you go through this, you'll see it's a lot of reading to make sure that you're following the rules. This is a government website, so you can't break the rules and say you're somebody that you're not. That is probably a federal offense. And so just make sure you're following the rules. You can apply online if you want. I think it's probably easier just to download the form. And in this link, there is a form right here. Submit your request, SSA 711. You can then download this PDF document, fill it out, and send it in with a check for the fees. The fees, it's $27. If you want the Nubident file, I think that's an additional $26. If you require certification, which is not required for genealogy unless you're doing professional level research, you just get the regular form. The $10 fee is a stamp on the end that says it's certified, okay? Then here's all the rules about what you can, as a requester, what you can and cannot do. All right, so that is where you apply for that under the Freedom of Information Act. I applied for this SS5 form years ago. At the time I applied for this, the Nubident form, which is over here on Family Search, was not available. It was not online at the time. Had this been available, I might not have applied for the SS5 because this has more information than the SS5 does. So unless you're just dying to have every record, you may find enough evidence here to take you back to the next generation. If the parents are noted, you're confident that this is the same person, then you may have enough information and you don't need the SS5. I'm just trying to save you a few dollars because it is $27. It's like, especially during the pandemic, it was several months worth of waiting. And I don't know that they've really sped up the process at all. So it could be that you're waiting a good long time before you get those records back. So I'm just giving you that as a hint. So long story short, there are 4 types of records that I found for my ancestor, and they all had a little bit of different information. And so with that information, now I have a more full set of data for my great-grandmother, Frances Madsen. How would you feel if you could resolve some of those brick walls in your family tree? Or maybe you're just getting started in genealogy. What if you had the skills to prove your family history, taking you back generation by generation, time and time again? Hi, my name is Connie Knox, and here at the Genealogy TV Academy, I help genealogy enthusiasts like you break down brick walls by learning smart research methods. I help you find the records and I help you get organized so that you can share your family history with your family and future generations. I do this through a monthly membership course. There are 2 components to this. Now, there is the self-guided platform where you can take the courses on your own time. And well, I'm adding 1 new lesson per month. And then the live Zoom meetings where you can watch a live presentation in the virtual classroom and participate in the discussion after the presentation. Now, if you can't make one of the live sessions, don't worry. All the programs are recorded and are added in the course platform following the presentation. So, are you ready to learn some new skills to help prove your family history, get organized, and break down some of those brick walls? All right, well, if you want to learn more, hit the Get Start button to learn a little bit more about pricing and how you can get signed up. All right, we'll see you in the virtual classroom.